May I please have this dance? This is where opportunity meets chance, where purpose meets a plan. A new possibility, a new day. May I please have this dance? This is a new life, a new way. So, may I please have this dance?
Simone Pollano, hands together, please.
Yesterday, while most of you were traveling, coming to Como by plane, by taxi, I don't know how, the number that Eurostat published, minus 11.7%. That's a projected population drop in the European Union by 2100. 53 million people, the equivalent of Spain, wiped from the map. But that number isn't what should you haunt tonight. What should you keep you awake is this: the share of working age Europeans, those between 20 and 64, will plunge from 58 to 50%. 8 points lost, a structural collapse in the continent's workforce. Eurostat just released these figures, so forgive me if I tear up my old script. The European Commission has done something very rare. It has put a date on a crisis. So in the next 14 minutes, 3 numbers, 1 image, 1 question, and a proposal that will sound impossible until I finish describing it. Let me tell you what this talk is not about. This talk is not about drones, it's not about robots, and I will disappoint most of the audience, it's also not about artificial intelligence. This talk is about who will put on the European breakfast table fruit in 2050, on its table, and about the unlikely coalition of countries, cultures, and technologies that will make sure it happens. I'm the European CEO of Tevel Aerobotics Technologies. We build flying autonomous units that pick fruit from trees, and my job every day is to face the gap between what agricultural robotics can already do and what Europe has not yet dared to imagine it could do. Number 1, I mentioned you numbers, 35. In the last 35 years, global fruit farming land has doubled. This is Fruit Agricultural Organizational data. From 30 million to 60 million hectares. In the same 35 years, the agricultural workforce collapsed by half. World Bank data. And the average age of a fruit picker today in Italy, France, in UK, in Germany, is 63 years old. Double, halved, 63. Now, put yesterday's Eurostat number on top of these three. Europe's working age share falls from 58 to 50% by 2100, and the quiet part Eurostat does not tell you, is that the decline has already begun. For decades, Europe eased labor shortages by letting workers being imported from neighboring countries. Poles were picking on Italian orchards. Moldovans and Ukrainians are picking on Polish orchards. But ask yourself, what happens in 2040? All those countries face the same demographic decline Eurostat warned you about. There is no next country. The map of cheaper labor has run out. So let me restate the first number for the European Commissioner. Europe has doubled the mouth it needs to feed, half the hands that feed them, and just been informed by its own statistical office that it cannot outsource its way out of the problem. That is the crossroad. It has a publication date, and it is April 16, 2026. Number two, $100 billion. The fruit market business is $1 trillion. Out of this, the harvesting, $100 billion. Of that, between 25 and 35% is pure harvesting costs. No fertilizer, no transport, no packaging, no cold chain, just the act of reaching up, grabbing a fruit and placing it into a bin without losing it. $30 billion a year to do by hand what has been done the same way for 5,000 years. The fruit industry has mechanized everything upstream and downstream. But the orchard itself, the place where the fruit actually grows, still looks the way it did in 1950. A wooden ladder, a canvas bag, a human picking and climbing up a tree under the sun, repeating the same motion 30,000 times a day. Harvesting is the weakest point of the food supply chain. Everything upstream works, everything downstream works. The single point of failure is harvesting. A $100 billion market is where the human arm is reaching for a fruit. And that arm is 63 years old, and according to Eurostat, it has no replacement coming. Remember this, that arm has shaped the design of every European orchard for 2 centuries. We will come back to it soon. Before other numbers, number 3, 7,500. That is the number of apple varieties in the world, 7,500. Of these, 18 are commercially dominant. Every single one looks different, feels different, detaches from the branches with a different twist, bruises at a different pressure, and ripens at a different time. If you are a robot trying to pick an apple, you're not solving one problem, you're solving 18, and that is only in apples. What we do at Tevel is not factory robotics. This is physical AI in an unstructured, outdoor, biological environment, which is a polite way of saying the wind blows, the light changes every 10 seconds, 2 apples touch and look like one, a shadow looks like a defect for a camera, and the sun at 2 p.m. blinds every camera ever built. Amid the chaos, our flying autonomous robots detects the fruit, classifies variety, grades its color, choose an approach angle, push aside foliage, rotate to detach the stem, and place it finally in a bin. Day and night. Even 11 global patents, 50 varieties across 10 fruit types, every apple returns to the farmer with a digital twin. Geolocation, weight, color, disease status, every fruit is a data point. But here's the part I want you to take home. The hardest question in agricultural robotics is not, can the machine pick the apple? The hardest question is, where should the machine be asked to pick? Because you can build the best agricultural robot on Earth and still deploy it in the wrong orchard, of the wrong variety, at the wrong height, pruned the wrong way. A robot without agronomy, it's a very expensive mistake. So here's the hypothesis of the next 10 years. The winners in agricultural robotics will not be the countries with the best engineers. They will be the countries with the best orchards to point the robot at. And Europe has 3 assets the rest of the world does not combine on the same piece of land. The agronomist. An Italian agronomist, German, Dutch, will tell you a difference between an apple grown 600 meters away from one at 900 meters. It will design a training system for each. The Trentino-Bolzano orchard outperforms the Washington State orchard in the US on yield, sugar, water. That is not climate, that is 2,000 years of horticulture. Second, the mechanical industry. Our flying unit is one machine. A harvest is a system. Tractors, conveyors, bin handlers, sorting lines. Italy has the densest agricultural machinery cluster on the planet. Emilia-Romagna, Lombardia, Piemonte. The iron is built here. Third, the story. In Italy, an apple is not an apple. It's a Melinda, a Marlene from Val di Non. The fruit carries the name of the valley it was born in. Europe has invented the most sophisticated narrative infrastructure for food on the planet. Origin, terroir, tradition. That infrastructure is worth billions. Agronomy, mechanics, story. Let me tell you again, agronomy, mechanics, story, the 3 assets we have in Europe. Now the proposal, the one I promised you at the beginning, and I want you to listen with the part of your brain that has not yet decided what is possible. For 200 years, I told you, we have designed orchards around the human shoulder. Every tree you have ever eaten an apple from was trained, pruned, and shaped so that the person on a ladder with a canvas bag could reach every branch within 3 meters of the ground. The picker became the architect. The geometry of the orchard is the geometry of the human arm. Now ask yourself a question. If the picker is no longer human, if the picker flies, if the picker reaches 5 meters or 7 or 10, what should the orchard look like? Here is what 2,000 years of horticulture already know, but have never been allowed to fully exploit. The fruit at the top of the tree gets more sun. More sun means more photosynthesis. More photosynthesis means higher sugar, denser nutrients, better color, longer shelf life. Every agronomist has had the wish and the desire to design against it, because the man with the ladder cannot reach its fruit, it had a limit. And there is a second fact. Cold air settles. Frost damages fruit at the ground level. Blossoms 1 meter off the ground freeze in April. Blossoms 5 meters up do not. In Trentino, in Piemonte, in Alsace, in Kent, a single late frost can destroy a year's production. Europe loses hundreds of millions of euros every spring to frost that sits in the lowest meters of every orchard. Now imagine it, an orchard where the fruit grows between 3 and 5 meters or higher, canopies engineered for light, not for ladders, harvest, pruning, thinning, spraying performed by autonomous flying units that do not care how high the branch is. Higher, it means higher yield per hectare, higher sugar, higher quality, lower frost loss. Every one of those gains is already known to science. What has been missing is the ability to operate at those heights at scale. That is no longer missing. And there is a second proposal in the same hardware, not yet developed, but easy to put in practice, and this is also my challenge to Europe. Today, a European orchard is sprayed on a calendar. Every 10 days, every tree gets the same dose of the same chemical, whether it needs it or not. It's called preventive spraying across whole fields. Another nice sounding words, like the Green Deal, for saying, I'm spraying just in case. Hundreds of kilograms of agrochemicals per hectare per season. But then imagine an aerial platform that flies tree by tree, leaf by leaf, before dawn, scanning, detecting, identifying in the first hours of an infection the exact branch where a fungus is starting, the exact cluster where a scaly insect is growing, and then instead of drowning the whole orchard, spraying only the affected 20 square centimeters, targeted, precise, preventive, but local. The European Green Deal asked for a 50% reduction in pesticide use by 2030. The strategy is called Farm to Fork. Early robotics detection is the instrument that turns the strategy into a schedule. This is not about replacing the farmer. This is about giving the farmer 100 additional eyes flying at night that never sleep and never miss. But none of this, not the taller orchard, not the precision spraying, not the robotic harvest works without one thing Europe has been pretending will arrive for free. And that is my claim: computational power. To design the orchard of 2040, we first have to simulate it. 30 years of weather, 15 varieties of apple, 4 training systems, 200 pruning decisions per tree per season. Every one of them compounds. The orchard of the future is a simulation problem before it is a planning problem. And the simulation at the scale needs serious compute on European soil under European rules. And now the quiet crisis inside European horticulture. For 2,000 years, this continent has accumulated horticultural knowledge that lives nowhere else on Earth. How to prune a Melinda in Val Venosta, how to train a Pierre Espalier in Emilia, when to thin a Williams in Alsace and Netherlands, Belgium. That knowledge lives in the heads. In the heads of men and women who now are 70 years old, whose children moved to the city, and whose grandchildren have never pruned a tree in their lives. Eurostat minus 11.7% is not only a number, it's a memory number. Every year that an old agronomist retires without a student, Europe forgets a branch of its own tradition. Urbanization accelerates it, mechanization accelerates it. The tractor does not ask the farmer how to read a leaf. Here's a quiet promise of AI applied to horticulture. The millennial knowledge of European can be captured before it is lost, simulated at scale, and improved by machines that learn from 1,000 agronomists instead of one. That is not AI replacing the farmer. This is AI making sure that when the farmer's granddaughter walks into the Trentino orchard in 2060, the orchard still knows what her grandmothers knew. And that is a civilizational effort. It needs common European compute, common European data, common European rules. No single country, not even Italy, Germany, France, with all its agronomy, can do it alone. Now I promised you a question. Here it is. Why? With all of this, with the agronomy, the machines, the story, the unique opportunity to redesign the orchard from scratch, the chance to preserve civilization's horticulture memory, and the yesterday's demographic emergency on top. Why does Europe still act as if it were a problem and not the answer? Anyone? I also don't know, but I'll tell you what I think. Europe's got a single market, just with 27 flavors of saying yes. Want to launch an autonomous orchard in Italy, France, and Germany? Great. Now enjoy juggling 3 subsidiaries, each with its own rules, payroll quirks, and tax headaches. Efficiency at its finest. Enrico Letta's and Mario Draghi's proposal, 28th regime proposal, one harmonized jurisdiction for innovation, trying to make a Delaware in a European as a 28th state, used to be about closing a competitiveness gap. After yesterday, it is about making arithmetic compatible with time. But here's the part Europe misses most. The rest of the world is not waiting for Europe to harmonize. They are waiting for Europe to host, to deploy the first vertical orchard, that is higher than the actual one, to publish the first pesticide reduction dataset, to write the reference case the world will copy. The question is not whether Europe will protect itself from foreign fruit or foreign technology. The question is whether Europe will recognize in time that it has already become the natural destination for the horticulture the rest of the world will need and will charge royalties for, not pay them for the privilege. That is not a trade position, this is a civilizational position, the place where agronomy is still an art, where iron is still precise, where a peer has a birth certificate, where knowledge is still passed down. That is what the world comes here to harvest and enjoy for. Thank you.
Simone.